Assalamu alaikum. My name is Dr. Gloria Bashir, and on behalf of Masjid Al Taqwa and resident Imam Tariq El Amin, as well as our Taleem committee that includes myself, Dr. Lionel Allen, Sister Rashida Fitzpatrick, and chaired by Dr. Aisha El Amin. I greet you with the greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum. So we will open our presentation with Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. Sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim. Ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. Ameen. And I will also read in English for our non-Muslim viewers today. With Allah's name, God's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. Praise be to God, the cherisher and sustainer of the worlds, the most gracious, most benefactor, the merciful redeemer, master of the day of judgment. Thee do we worship, and thine aid we seek. Show us the straight way to those upon whom thou hast bestowed thy grace, and those whose portion is not wrath. Ameen, ameen, ameen. Thank you so very much. Again, assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters, and to our guests today who may be new to our Taleem presentation. Our topic today is presented by Dr. Alia Ammar. Alia Ammar, Ammar. And I'd like to share a bit about her bio. Dr. Ammar earned her PhD in clinical psychology from Loyola University in Chicago. Her training and clinical experiences in clinical neuropsychology was completed at the University of Chicago Hospitals, the Jesse Brown VA Medical Center, and the University of Illinois College of Medicine. She has been a licensed clinical psychologist in Illinois since 2006, specializing in adult and geriatric clinical neuropsychology. She has also been internationally licensed in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and in clinical neuropsychology, being licensed in both those areas in clinical neuropsychology, pardon me. Dr. Ammar also became the United Arab Emirates' first General Civil Aviation Authority licensed aeromedical specialist in clinical neuropsychology in the Middle East and North Africa region. Dr. Ammar has a private practice, the Midwest Consultants for Cognitive Medicine in Gurnee, Illinois. She has practiced nationally and internationally and returned last year to Illinois to support the congressional campaign of a long-term social justice activist, which aligned with her social activist goals of civic engagement and social justice with an emphasis on outreach to unrepresented ethno-religious communities. With all of her expertise, Dr. Ammar seeks to honor the unparalleled dedication to civil rights and social justice exemplified by her late uncle, Dr. Timeo Black. And so for today, Dr. Ammar will discuss in her presentation her very recent experiences in Palestine and Israel as a participant in the Black Jerusalem Initiative that was organized by Iman in partnership with Bayan Islamic Graduate School and co-convened by Dr. Rami Nashashibi and Reverend Dr. Otis Moss III of Trinity United Church of Christ. This delegation's objective was to view the spiritual and cultural life of Jerusalem through the life of African Palestinians and other communities from across the African diaspora. Dr. Ammar's presentation and the following discussion will explore police brutality, gross socioeconomic disparities, religious disparities in the Holy Lands, and religious persecution against Muslims, Christians, and others. Today's presentation is titled, Witnessing the Palestinian-Israeli Conflict Beyond Propaganda. So it is with great pleasure that I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Alia Ammar. And I am most thrilled about this. I'm so very excited to hear her presentation. Dr. Ammar, welcome.
Jazakallahu khair, Dr. Gloria, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to everyone from Masjid al-Taqwa, everyone who's joining us today. I know that some of our Christian and Jewish friends are also joining. So in addition to saying salam, I will offer peace and shalom to them. And I want to extend tremendous gratitude to Masjid al-Taqwa for allowing me to do this presentation. Also, a heartfelt, and I don't think I can ever express enough gratitude, a heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Rami Nashashibli. I'll have to get that. I want to thank him and thank Iman, Bayan, and Pastor Boss of Trinity, as well as Rabbi Andrea Young, who is from a synagogue in Evanston. I want to thank them all for what they did to help us throughout this journey of opening our awareness to a dialogue about this region, and also for just watching out for us, to be honest, and protecting us throughout. I'm going to start where we typically end, and I prepared a slide presentation to guide us through some of this. I don't like being stared at for an hour, so I'm going to put something up on the screen now, and inshallah we'll be able to follow from there. So let me just kind of put this, and I think I can do it this way as well. So
if I can just jump in and just add something to our audience. We've muted everyone because we want to make sure that Dr. Ammar is able to get through her presentation. We will have a Q&A afterwards. So please jot your questions down so that we can get to everyone at the end. Thank you so very much.
Okay, I'm going to start this off, put it in slideshow mode here. Okay, does that show large on everyone's screen?
I see it well on my screen.
Okay, perfect. So I want to begin today by sort of explaining what the topic is and why it's important. We were invited, alhamdulillah, on a journey for which I also want to thank my sponsor, Muhammad Abdullah, to go and experience Jerusalem, Palestine, Israel through the lens of the Black liberation movement and through the lens of Black experiences in Palestine. And in part that is because there is a disconnect, even here locally in Chicago, where our two communities live. There's a disconnect in our understanding of the diversity that has always been a part of this region. And that's not unintentional, that's intentional. Our media kind of shows us one light by which to view this land. And so our witnessing of what we saw throughout the journey took us beyond that propaganda, beyond the message that we are constantly having pushed at us. And as you can see in the last week, has been on steroids, to just put it bluntly. So I'm going to be showing you a little bit. Let me see how we make this one. Here we are. So I'm going to begin at the end. I'm going to begin with the Exodus, how we left, our journey home. And I'm beginning there because, honestly, that's where the media wants you to begin. I was interviewed in Turkey on the airport, and my friends who called me later said, hey, you were on the news, you were on Channel 7, you were on ABC, blah, blah, blah. And it was the end of the journey, and they wanted a very specific type of story, and the attempts to sort of also lean in and express my grave concern with what's happening weren't the central piece of the message. But we do have to begin at that end and also express what was so concerning at the end of our journey home. So I'm just going to show you a little bit. I titled this one Beaches, Baha'is, and Bombs, because our last day in Israel and Palestine was very interesting. There's a disconnect that happens constantly while you're there, where things that are happening can, for moments, be so beautiful that it could just bring you to tears, and a moment later can help you experience some things that perhaps will be jarring and difficult to get over. This first picture is my roommate, Katie. I've been joking with Katie. I told her that if I had met her anywhere else, particularly like at a Starbucks, I would think that maybe she was going to really complain about her soy mocha latte. But I've got to tell you that this sister has the heart of a warrior and has justice and peace in her mind at all times. She started her morning out by taking a swim with a group of people in our group. And so they had an early morning swim. It was really refreshing. We went from there to the beautiful Baha'i Gardens, where the Baha'i community had acquired quite some time ago a large swath of land. They built a beautiful, peaceful, serene area for spiritual worship. And it just happens to overlook an area that for them represents quite a tragic time when their senior religious leader was jailed just across from that view. And we went from that beautiful garden to hopping in our bus, and I'm just going to play a little for you about what happened as we arrived at the Tel Aviv airport to try to return home. For those of you who are joining from Black Jerusalem, this might be a moment that is jarring, and so I'm warning you in advance. Let me just play this.
I don't know, but I see people running. Huh? Right, look over there. Oh my God. Well, we gotta get in the airport now. What? They're running? They're running. Let's go. Can you open the back door? Can you open the door? Right out for the door. Look, they're laying down. They're laying down. Tracy. Where's Tracy? The back is open. Get out. Bye, Mom. I love you too. Missiles over our head. Come on. Go. Go. Stay together. Well, hurry up. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Oh my God. Come on, come on. Let's go. 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 You ready? Come on. Let's go. Come on.
So at this part of our journey, we have now entered into the first day of what you've seen for the past week, all across your screens. We had known in the morning as we attempted to visit the Baha'i temple, we were aware that something was happening, that something had started. We were aware that there had been kidnappings. Rabbi Andrea has had friends that were kidnapped. And we were aware that we were going to need some extra security, that things were changing very, very rapidly. But as we pulled up, and I'll just kind of stop the share for a moment, as we pulled up to the airport, it was shocking. Your mind doesn't quite know how to process what's happening. It doesn't understand. And so when we first pulled up, you heard on the video the sirens that were going on, and we saw lights. We initially kind of misconstrued that and thought that those were just regular airport lights. And then you heard people saying those are missiles. And so we saw missiles coming in, we saw rockets intercepting the missiles, and we began to run. And I'm going to leave that as a starting point as we begin to discuss things, because what has happened is tragic and unacceptable, but it is tragic, unacceptable, and something that could be anticipated over time, not just because of the way in which one people has treated another, but also because it's happened before. We've seen this in 2014. We've seen this in 1947, 48. We've seen this in the 1930s. Why do I say that? Why am I describing this end point as something that we've seen before, and something that doesn't excuse what happens, but helps change the lens by which we view it? I'm going to return to our share for a moment and continue from there. Oops. Okay. Let's see. So as we attempted to make it home over the next 4 days, we had to cross into Jordan. We made our way into Turkey. We landed at O'Hare Airport. And I think I can speak for my group in saying that we realized sometime after landing back home that our hearts never left Palestine, that what we learned and what we understood on this journey was so profound that we wake up every morning. We check in with each other throughout the day, and we are taking these lessons and, inshallah, as I'm doing today, hopefully spreading them. So let's begin not at the end, but at the actual beginning. Some reflections from Black Jerusalem. The beginning begins quite a long time ago. Europe attempted at the early third of the 20th century to resolve a centuries-old problem that the church had with its relationship with the Jewish people, in that the Jewish people had never truly been welcomed. They had constantly been persecuted. They had tried many ways in terms of shifting their identity, trying to blend in. They were passing for, I don't need a better word for that. That's exactly what happened. They were passing at certain points. There were members of the Jewish community that thought if they just became Christians, that maybe the Christians in Europe would not force them into ghettos and oppress them. But nothing worked. And so we know that eventually the rhetoric became the Holocaust, a tragedy set upon a people in Europe, but also the beginning of a tragedy that would be set upon a people in one of the most diverse corners of our world. So that would be the people of Palestine, the people in Jerusalem, the people of the Holy City. And Dr. Bashir and Dr. Amos Goldberg encourage us to see this as a continuum, that the Holocaust and the Nakba are not past events that happened 75 years ago, but they are a continuing and painful journey that began at one point in time and continue to endure to this day. We visited various places that brought that purely to mind. On the left at the bottom, you'll see a picture here of the Holocaust. This is people living inside of the Warsaw Ghetto. And right next to it in 1948, Palestinians surrendering under Israeli military as the Nakba, which translates to the tragedy for Palestinians, began. Back in 1948, the Ada camp, which I'll tell you a bit about later, the Ada camp was opened as a temporary refugee camp. 75 years later, this is a little girl running through the street in the Ada camp. The Holocaust, through the Nakba to the present, is a story of colonialist oppression and apartheid that have been visited upon one traumatized people who now traumatize another people. We started our journey initially in Jerusalem at Al-Aqsa Mosque in the Old City. I can't even begin to tell you how excited I was about that component of the journey, because although I do this presentation in honor of my Uncle Tim, Timuel Black, my Uncle Tim became my uncle because he was the brother of my second stepfather. My first stepfather was a wonderful man who made no difference between me and his own children. And I grew up in a family that was filled with love and filled with Black liberation theology from a very early age. But there was a constant presence in my life between my first stepfather, my dad, and my second stepfather. And that constant presence was my Baba, my Palestinian Baba, who grew up in Jerusalem and told me stories of how he used to play soccer in front of the Dome of the Rock, which is the mosque that you see here, one of the holiest sites in Islam. And so I was so excited and desperate to finally come and see this beautiful people that I've spent much of my life fighting for and defending. But more than anything, I wanted to touch those old stones at Masjid Al-Aqsa, touch the space where, even though he's now gone, he once played as a child. And so we gathered each morning for Fajr, a small group of us, just to pray inside of Al-Aqsa. And we met children in the old city and lots of people. I'll show you some pictures of that as we go along. But we also learned a story of that paints some of the difficulties that we would face in Al-Aqsa and at the old city. And that story is of the importance of the Dome of the Rock and the rock itself. The rock that is contained within the Dome of the Rock has been viewed as of special spiritual importance that even predates Islam, predates Christianity, and predates Judaism. People always found this particular area of the world to be an extremely holy site and a site that they traveled great distances to arrive at. And because it is now located and has been for hundreds of years within Masjid Al-Aqsa, it is now constantly under threat of seizure. Because every morning as we try to take our peaceful journey to Masjid Al-Aqsa and also to the Dome of the Rock, and I'm sorry, the rock is located inside of the Dome of the Rock. Every morning as we tried to take our peaceful journey there, we encountered difficulties because there's a gate with 3 levels of police presence. The first include Israeli military. They carry machine guns and assault weapons, if I'm not mistaken. The second level is Israeli police, and the third level is includes the Palestinian police who guard the masjid section. They have walkie-talkies. But each time, as you're trying to get to prayer, you're kind of going through this personal jihad of just trying and struggling to make your way to say your morning prayers. And if it wasn't going to be enough that you're going to pass through those 3 levels of security, the desire for this particular rock, out of all of the space that has been taken, is so great that there is a strong presence of Israeli settlers every single day. And so every single morning you wake up very aware of the occupation, very aware that you are in a land where your very safety is constantly under question. And within this land, there's no concept that is being adhered to of truly sharing this space. There is a constant push, a constant in-your-face push of settler dominance. So much so that the very stairs that you'll try to walk on as you attempt to get to that mosque in the morning can sometimes be flooded with settlers who are trying to push you right off the stairs. That results from time to time in bursts of resistance. And so the media likes to show you these pictures like the one over on the right of children running and Palestinians running, and young boys and teens, and it looks, just terribly, terribly violent. And it is also terribly, terribly one-sided because these are people who have extreme restrictions on their movement. They often cannot leave their city. The police are constantly present. The police arrest young children as young as 10 and 11, separate them from their parents. They don't have to charge you with anything, but they can keep you in those jails. And so the children began to try to resist. And their very existence is a form of resistance. But sometimes, and this happened in the holy days for Judaism, we arrived during the Jewish high holidays. Sometimes that resistance looks a bit like this.
It's the entry point that leads into most of this part of the city. We are going to, and we've raised it on calls, if we ever find ourselves in a moment like the one we're in, and you're in the old city, we're asking folks to really not get involved in any way, shape, or form, to try your very best to step away from any type of pursuit of is the entry point.
Okay. I'm going to stop us again there and just take a moment to sort of explain a little bit of what we just saw. What we just saw are children who are tired. They are exhausted. We saw children who are tired of living under an occupation. And so when they come out, they kind of push back at the police in this way. I'm going to bring us back. Oops. I'm going to bring us back to a few things. Thank you for bearing with me and the technical struggles. Oops, there. Okay. And we're going to continue from here. Beyond that initial introduction, we also immediately jumped into seeing a bit about the African Palestinian community. It might surprise you that there is an African Palestinian community, but it doesn't surprise them. The African Palestinians have been there for hundreds of years, for hundreds of years. And as a matter of fact, we were taught that it's sort of a misnomer to think of Jerusalem, Palestine, Israel as being placed in the Middle East, when if you look at a map geographically, this is actually part of the MENA region. This is North Africa. And so don't be surprised in North Africa if you actually see Africans and if the African presence has been there very long. I love this picture because this particular group of individuals at the Afro-Palestinian Cultural Center just remind me of aunts and uncles that we might see sitting among the pioneers or sitting in our own homes. But they are people who live in the old city. And the old city is a bit run down because Palestinians are not allowed to build anything. They can't really fix their homes or build anything. You have to get a permit that's almost impossible to get. But if you build something in order to expand your living quarters or live comfortably, it will be considered illegal, and it can trigger the eviction and expulsion of you and your family from your home. So there are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of eviction notices going out to Palestinians. We visited the Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial, and it's an extremely poignant experience to just see what one people can do to another people. And then to recognize that it's not just one people, but it's a system of oppression that, like a volcano, just erupted. And my particular connection to the Holocaust has also been interesting because my Uncle Timuel Black helped to liberate the camps. And so for the camps that he helped to liberate, it set him on a course of social justice for the remainder of his life. These are pictures of many people who lost their lives in the Holocaust, and the ceiling of the building is designed like the dome of a chimney. And all of these little objects here at the bottom by the people are books filled with the names of the dead. It's such a deep lesson of history, and it wasn't fully learned. What has come out of that lesson over the past 75 years has not been a practice of recognizing the common humanity that we all share and honoring that, but has been distorted so much so that on the left at the bottom, what you see is a picture that I took of a young Israeli child who is playing with his toy machine gun and learning to kind of load and unload it and set it. It's important to know that Israelis are allowed to open carry machine guns, assault rifles. And so when you're in the city, there is this constant feeling that you are not safe. When you come out of Yad Vashem and you're looking across at the valley, what you see are the homes of settlers and the homes of people who will be evicted in order to make room for more settlers. I was always struck while we were there at how much land there was to share, and yet instead of living in community, living next door, creating one's own, there is a constant seizure of land from the Palestinians. Such a seizure occurred within the Nashashibli family. This home previously belonged to Rami Nashashibi's grandfather. We happened to be outside of it as we were touring a different area, and the owner of the home came out quite disrespectfully to argue that that could have never been the home of his grandfather. I believe there's a plaque on the outside of the home that helped us to understand that that was indeed what it was. And so people who are living under this oppression and living under the constant threat of eviction have been forced into ghettos. And even in the ghettos, they are not safe. Here we see a picture of one of the communities that we visited. These eyes will show up in many different types of pictures. It's a way of the Palestinians reminding the Israelis that the world is watching them. In this particular village, in this particular area of the city is quite devastating because the parents of the children who are arrested are often allowed to bring the children home under a form of house arrest, and they cover up the windows so that the children can't see their friends and their family members playing or going about regular life, because that would sadden them. But what it does is it disrupts the parent-child bond, and the children come out of that experience hating their parents. We also saw a practice consistently of neighborhoods that were being razed to the ground, completely destroyed. What happens in these cases is that fictionally or non-fictionally, the Israelis will claim that a certain portion of the land is now sacred to them, that someone important visited there or did something there. And then they go in to excavate. And that excavation means the removal and displacement of thousands of people from those communities. In this particular area, it was also heartrending because there are two things to note here. We recently had groups that have gone from the United States to Palestine and Israel for various purposes. They don't see neighborhoods like this very often because there's a tunnel that runs under them, so that just like people don't have to see what happens in our communities in Chicago and the disparities that we face, they can walk right past or drive right past without ever seeing the realities on the ground. One of the more heartbreaking realities on the ground here is that there's a cemetery located just across from all of these homes that you're seeing. There's a cemetery where the parents have buried their dead children, dead Palestinian children. And the Israelis have now prohibited them from coming to that area, and they've turned it into a garbage site. And we saw kind of the broken headstones that were there. If the parents do leave their homes to come and try to take the garbage off of the graves of their own dead children, they can be arrested and fined heavily. And so the Palestinians live in communities that are constantly under threat. They remind us that the world is watching. When they're evicted from their homes, this picture over here shows a small cave-like structure where some people who absolutely have nowhere else to go have simply moved into these cave-like areas. And right across from that, this is a picture of a settler's home as they prepare for the high holy days. This is a picture of one of the older Jewish cemeteries. And as I said, Rabbi London helped us to process a lot of this. She's a woman with a beautiful spirit. I encourage anyone who is looking for allies in bringing social justice to this land to look up Rabbi Andrea Young and go, be at her cemetery, be in her presence, because nothing that I'm saying to you today should be construed as meaning that we should hate one group or hate another group. We should hate oppression. We should hate human suffering, no matter who's doing it, no matter why. These two young women over here are two Israeli women who are parts of the resistance, the internal resistance from the Jewish community to this type of oppression. The woman on the far right goes out every morning with Palestinian farmers and helps them to safely herd their cattle and herd their sheep because they do so under machine guns from soldiers who are attempting to take over their farms. Her presence is there to be protective. A lot of us have seen and heard of the Western Wall and the Wailing Wall. I wanted you to know that the Wailing Wall, where people go and they place their prayers into the wall, is a holy site with an unholy history that has been attached to it under this occupation and oppression. This large courtyard that you see with all the people walking was created after a Moroccan neighborhood was completely razed to the ground. All of its people displaced, people who had been there again for hundreds, if not thousands of years, completely displaced so that there would be a comfortable open courtyard to walk through. We visited the Ethiopian Orthodox communities. And I got to tell you, those people pray from early in the morning until late in the afternoon with such a beautiful spirit. And they look so much like our own sisters, our own children. And we were just struck by the beauty of their community. Ethiopia prides itself on being a nation that was never conquered and never occupied. And so this is a big, beautiful Orthodox church that they have there. Interestingly enough, as we left, we learned by surprise that directly across the street was yet another home formerly owned by the Nashashibi family. Because of their role as rulers within Palestine and Israel, within Jerusalem for hundreds of years, there's great pride taken in the seizure of their homes. And so you see plaques that go up about that. Our daily balance went back and forth. We went from things that broke your heart to things that opened your heart. And so our next trip took us on a cable car across to Jericho. Joshua fought the Battle of Jericho. And Jericho is an area that, interestingly enough, the man in this picture with Rami Nashashibli is actually the mayor of Jericho, an African Palestinian mayor of Jericho. And we had a great introduction as well to the Christian community, looking at their unity and how they have been attempting to bring peace and justice and balance within this land. We visited churches and synagogues and universities. The Dar al-Kalima University held a conference on land, people, and culture. We were blessed with the tones of Sister Drea Denor. And then from there, from our moment of peace, we went to the Ada camp. The Ada camp is an area that has been very decimated very impacted. I won't say decimated because this is a very strong people, so I won't do that to them. But there are pictures and paintings and murals and art all along the walls of the Ada camp. They can't visit Jerusalem. They don't have permission to leave the camp. And so they draw pictures of Masjid al-Aqsa and the Dome of the Rock, as well as pictures of their martyred sons and pictures of people such as our own American journalist who was murdered last November with no accountability. There was no shield of protection for her as an American because she's Palestinian. And well, our government takes a different position on justice when it comes to that. Pastor Moss did an amazing sermon from the Mount of Temptation. And I encourage anyone who can to sort of look that up and see what our journey through Jericho was like. And soon after that, we visited Nashashibli land that's still in Nashashibli hands. And this is the cousin, Hani, of Rami Nashashibli. Hani is a gourmet cook, and we had some of the most beautiful and delicious food that you could ever have in a home that he and his family can rarely leave and cannot take vacations from, because if a member of the family is absent, then under the law, it can trigger a mechanism by which their home can be seized. We went to a town called Lot. And I want to tell you about this area because just like we don't grow poppy seeds in Black neighborhoods, and there are no African-American gun manufacturers and no African gun manufacturers globally, and yet our communities are so impacted by drugs and gang violence, these same influences are suddenly popping up in this particular city, which now has a high murder rate and a high problem with drug addiction. I want to return to Ada Camp for just a moment and tell you something very special about this particular space. When I was on Hajj, I prayed in Muzdalifah for certain things, and one of them was just to be protected from, any needs that I might have and any difficulties that we might have at that part of the journey. I prayed in the same way at Ada Camp for a totally different reason, because over here on the right side, if you look where it says hope, just over to the left is a turret, and from that turret, the Israeli soldiers spray onto this entrapped community what's called skunk water. Skunk water is chemically treated to smell like feces. It's also chemically treated to stay on your body for 3 weeks. Your body, your clothes, your home, your furniture, everything, your whole community smells like feces for 3 weeks. And the harder that you try to wash it off, the worse it smells. You'll also notice that on these rooftops, there are canisters. If you look at the bottom right corner of your screen, there are canisters, and those canisters would normally collect rainwater, because although the Israelis are supposed to provide a 1-month supply of water to this refugee camp that has now been in existence, not temporarily, but for 75 years, they don't. They provide about a 2-week supply of water, and the people try to collect all of the water that they can from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. And so they collect the rainwater and it's on their roofs. But when the soldiers from this turret get bored with putting feces smelling water onto people, they shoot at the canisters, and sometimes they shoot at the people. The Ada camp is the most tear gassed site on the planet. And these tear gas containers have now been mined as a source of metal to make really beautiful jewelry. But I want you to see that these containers are made in the USA. So I decided to buy a little bit of what we've put over there. I'm just going to show you for a quick moment. This ring came from the Ada camp, and it's made out of tear gas containers because the people of Palestine believe that their existence is in effect their best resistance to oppression. I could show you more. I know that we're short for time, so I think I'm going to ask first if you would like to see more pictures, more information, or if there are any questions that we can begin answering.
Most people are muted. I would very much like it if we could continue a little bit. We are prepared to go longer than our normal time. For those who may need to jump off, we understand. But we think that the information is very, very beneficial and valuable. So we'd like to continue.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll go ahead and pull this back up.
Dr. Alia?
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Imam Tariq. I just wanted to let you know that we are monitoring when you are ready for the Q&A, those whose hands are up in the chat. Okay?
Thank you. Jazakallahu khair. I appreciate that.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Like I mentioned, the people in the Ada camp cannot visit Jerusalem. But the human mind is something that's difficult to change unless you allow a colonialist mentality to take you over, unless you allow people into your mind to tell you that you are less than you were, that you don't belong in your own home, and that you can never visit the places that Allah had set for you to be a part of. And so someone, as the camps were begun, recreated all of Jerusalem as he knew it, all of the old city from wood. And I don't know the full age of this. I believe it was done shortly after the camps were built, but this is a full recreation of the old city so that the people remember. The graffiti is an interesting feature because the camp is walled in and the people have freed themselves through art. And so you constantly see many pieces of graffiti and art. And Banksy, the world famous stencil artist, has come multiple times and placed art on these walls, which makes it difficult, more difficult for the soldiers to begin bombing and shooting things. He also built the hotel in which this particular exhibit and multiple other exhibits, as well as about $200 million worth of his artwork, is now housed directly across the street from the Ada camp. These are not pictures, by the way. These are just stock pictures that came with the slide. I began to run out of time this morning, but I want to tell you that we visited the African Hebrew Israelite community in Dimona. We also visited the city of Lod, where I showed you pictures of kind of the burgeoning crime. One of the sayings, one of the quotes that we got from a Palestinian hip hop artist and activist, Tamer Nafar, was about the diversity. He uses colorful language, but we all have ears and we all are familiar, I believe. But he said something that struck us all, I think, in that instead of a melting pot, this country could have been such a beautiful salad. This land could be such a beautiful salad if the chef wasn't so, and I'm going to say flipping racist. Jerusalem, Palestine, Israel have always had the potential for multiculturalism. But we are currently watching as 2 genocides impact the people that inhabit this land. Only one of those genocides has ever been condemned. The Holocaust has been condemned. But the continuation of the Holocaust through the Nakba and through the continued occupation of Palestine and Israel can still be stopped. And we aren't doing it. I think the rest of the slides are just for me to put a reminder in that I think that there are some lessons from our history here. And I don't need a slide to kind of show you that one, so I'm going to stop at this point. The lessons that I want you to take are this. Why are we connected as African Americans to this land? Because we as a people understand the need for justice. We as a people continue to demand justice. I think that as African Americans, we can understand being torn away from your land. We can understand having our land torn away from us. When I hear about these evictions, I think about my grandmother having to try to defend her land from the Klan. I think that as a people, African Americans can understand what it is like to live in circumstances where people are constantly presenting a threat to your body, to your physicality, to the integrity of your family. I think that as African Americans, we can understand the danger of allowing our minds to be colonized so that we sympathize with people who are doing wrong. And that as African American Muslims, we understand the journey of Black liberation. We understand the journey that we have had to take in order to get the world to see us and see the reality of our own humanity. And that because we have this unique lens, because we understand what it means to fight and to have our own existence be a part of the resistance, that our connection to the Palestinian people must be unquestionable, that we have to stand not only for the Palestine that we thought we knew, but for the Palestine that we now realize very much has always included people who look very much like us and look very much like our families. And even though I believe it is a deep shame that we sometimes need people to look like us for us to understand that their humanity is as dear as our own, if that's what it takes, brothers and sisters, then hey, our cousins need us. And not just our cousins as African Americans, but also our cousins in the Judaic faith, because Judaism is a beautiful religion. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam loved the Jews, loved their communities. But this is not Judaism. Rabbi Young was struck by that over and over again. Our companion, Miss Sydney, who was traveling with us, she was struck by that over and over again. There is nothing godly about what is being done. This is not land being seized because of some religious right to it. This is land being seized as part of the continued European colonization of indigenous people and indigenous lands. This is a European problem being solved by the blood of our brothers and sisters. And so all I ask is that you consider what you've seen and that you realize that we are one humanity, that is what our teachings are, that we are one humanity. And that when we see something that is wrong, we change it with our hands. And if we can't, with our tongues, and if we can't, we hate it with all of our hearts. But that's the weakest of faith. And the one thing that I don't expect from African Americans who have been fighting as long as we have been fighting is weakness. So with peace, I invite you to please ask any questions. And again, I thank you. I thank all of the members of the Black Jerusalem family. I thank Dr. Nasha Shibley and all who contributed to this trip. And I am deeply and ever grateful to Muhammad Abdullah and his family, for whom I pray, as well as I pray for all of the Palestinians and the Israelis who need prayer to bring them out of madness.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alia. The pictures and your comments were very, very breathtaking. So we'd like to open for questions now. And we did have a few people with their hands up. So I'm going to ask if you'd like to, yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. If those persons, as you call them out, they are now able to unmute themselves to ask their question. So as you recognize them, they can unmute themselves.
Okay, great. Thank you so very much. I see, brother, there's an iPhone, Anthony.
Yes, that's me.
Yes. Please feel free to ask your question or make your comment.
My comment is, I'd like to truly thank you, Doctor, for no doubt bringing light to this situation that's been going on for years. I mean, years. And certainly me being an African-American male in America, 61 years of age, have seen some of and felt some of the trauma of what, say, other minorities, according to America, calling us minorities, go through. But my question is, or maybe a comment, what is it that I can do to be more active in searching for equality for all of us?
You can join American Muslims for Palestine, reach out to Jewish Voices for Peace, call, and I mean call to the point of not wanting to make another call. Call your representatives. This is being done in our name. This is being done with our tax dollars. I'm not a part of this madness. I want my representative to actually represent me and not represent the lobbies that support and fund their campaigns. We are at risk of losing our own democracy. Israeli police are being brought into America to train the police departments here. The brutality that exists there is being imported here as part of those efforts. You saw in Florida where, I'm gonna call it as I see it, where the white supremacist governor of Florida has issued a state of emergency for a war that is occurring 7,000 miles away. But he can't see what happens in his own backyard when over and over and over we have to shout at him that Black lives matter and that he can't erase Black history. So we have to be vigilant in pushing and enforcing our politicians to honor principles of social justice. And they don't want to listen. And the media has colluded so much so that even MSNBC, most liberal, took 3 Muslim journalists off of the air this week and gave us a lukewarm explanation that somehow they were just all kind of, you know, chilling somewhere else for the week. But if we are out there on the streets, as people have been throughout the world this week, that can't be ignored. I was in Dubai when the Black Lives Matter protests of 2020 and 2021 were in full effect. I saw you guys on TV in Dubai because they couldn't silence a people who were together, united, and bringing it out to the street.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have Brother Ishmael. Your hand is up.
Yes, indeed. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Listen, yeah, I got a comment and a question and what have you. You know, I noticed, like you just said, that what you just said about those police and how they are policing over there, and the methods that they're using, they're trying to put it on over here, you know, which they've been doing anyway, but they're trying to escalate it here again. And then it seems like all of it seems to be coming to a point in our head. And one of the questions and I had, I mean, because I'm really full behind what was just said. And, you know, I've been hearing a lot of this because of this, and this is really heart-wrenching to hear this kind of stuff going on like this, you know. And then the thing I want to say is that we find out what you said through your what you had, a good doctor, and that was about, you know, the coming together of these people. This is one of the major solutions that could help dissolve all of that foolishness when those people realizing the ones, the Israelis that are not with these soldiers that are doing all these heinous acts, okay, they need to come together with the rest of the community, because they're not together like that yet. And they got this man representing them, Netanyahu, and he's taking them, you know, he's listening to this and he's against them, and most of them realize that, and they want to be at peace with the rest of what's going on there. And they got these people guiding them into this fantasy world that they're gonna be rulers, because, man, it's just too much. A lot that I had to comment about, but man, it's a lot going on over there. And believe it or not, like you say, we have to make those du'as and do whatever else we can do. The thing I have to say, and the last thing I have to say is Labbaik, Labbaik, Allahumma Labbaik, La Sharika Laka Labbaik. Inna hamna wa ni'mata laka wal mulk la sharika lak. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. Allah help them and help us all, inshallah.
Your last statement reminds us that we return to Allah. It's a statement that we make as we make Hajj. It reminds us that we return to Allah, and I think a centrality of that across all of the Abrahamic faiths is that there is one God. We worship him, and he asks certain things of us. And one of the things that he's constantly asked of us is to recognize him and recognize each other by the way in which we interact with one another in his name. And so whether you're looking at the Israeli government and its role in the oppression of this people, or you're looking at the change in mentality, because the very first people to arrive after the Holocaust refused to take the homes that the Palestinians had been evicted from. They were walked into homes that still had food on the table, still had other people's dishes and other people's clothes. And they remembered that they had just gone through the same experiences in Germany, France, Poland. And they said, not in our name. Nope, we're not going to do that. But somehow there's something in the human spirit that one generation to the next, we lose those lessons. And sometimes we find ourselves emulating our oppressors instead of emulating the God consciousness, the taqwa that we are called to.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Ya
Ex-
Allah. Yeah, excellent. Excellente.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. We have a hand up by Brother Bill Chambers.
Hey, Bill.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum, doctor.
Alaikum assalam. Good to see you, brother.
Good to see you too. I almost without words to express my gratification for your talk today. It really added a lot of the clarity in which you presented, particularly the things you said at the end. I'll just put it this way: it's one of the things that I kind of need to hear right now, because there's so much negative stuff going on, and it's just very hard. My question for you was that I've been on a number of delegations to Palestine, and most of them were a while ago. And sadly, everything that you've said, nothing's changed. It's very disturbing to just kind of imagine that. But my question was that I always remember back then, if there were people who were Muslim, people who were African American, people who were African, whoever, particularly people who were Palestinian that were on our delegations, they were really treated badly. Like coming into the country, I could get in being a kind of old white guy or whatever, but these were people that were interrogated for hours and that type of thing. So I'm just wondering, how were you and the other people on the delegation treated, when you were coming in or leaving? And then how were you treated along the way by the Israelis?
Thanks for that question, Bill. So I think in part, we have to recognize that only weeks before Israel was granted a visa waiver status, meaning that you don't have to have a visa to journey between Israel and America. This is a status that is traditionally contingent upon a certain level of human rights being present within a stable country. And Israel simply doesn't meet that. It continues to violate international law without consequence. And so as this came into being, I think that it's had a little bit of an effect on how they are operating with Americans. At multiple times during our journey, as we were pulled over at checkpoints and things, one of the things that people would say is, American? And then they kind of back off a little bit. That didn't entirely make us safe. A few of us kind of always get randomly selected. And I got a bit tired of answering some questions as I tried to get into Jordan, but it was nothing compared to what has happened in the past. I do understand what you're saying about some of those past interactions. What we encountered actually was a fair amount of curiosity in Jerusalem, because we had a photo day where we all wore our Black Jerusalem t-shirts, and we had our Black Jerusalem backpacks on, and people would stop us and say, what is this? What is Black Jerusalem? There were points in the day when that was done politely, and there were many points in the day where that wasn't done politely. The one thing that I can say is that you have a constant feeling, no matter how you're overtly being treated, you have a constant feeling while you're in this occupied land that you're not truly safe. And I think that any African-American man who has to get in his car or walk down the street or breathe or go to a theater or whatever the reasons are lately that that we are targeted in this country, that we can relate to that as African Americans, that our bodies are not zones of safety because the society around us is constantly reacting to that. I will add one other thing here. I mentioned that my roommate, Katie, was quite the warrior. She came with us one morning to Fajr prayer, and it was actually her whiteness that attracted attention and placed her in, I'll say placed her closer to the types of experiences that you experienced many years ago, and represented a threat to her and possibly to our morning prayer group. But alhamdulillah, we came through.
Alhamdulillah.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm just checking the chat as we go. Imam Tariq, can you come on screen?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam, my brother. Good to see you.
Pleasure to see you, sis. Dr. Alia. First of all, I want to say thank you for taking the time to share your experience. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of us all that I'm truly appreciative, not just for the presentation, but that Allah facilitated the group's return, and that you're able to humanize what is not being portrayed in human terms, but very much the opposite, where we are the Palestinians are being demonized, and because of that, we see a tremendously lacking response from our leaders, from our government leaders, that are not recognizing that humanity that you are speaking of. And I just want to lift up very quickly again the things that you said that we can do, right? Going back to engaging with our elected representatives, joining those organizations that have already have a stake, are recognized in advocating for the humane treatment of our Palestinian brothers and sisters, as well as those minority communities that often are not spoken of. So I'm gonna turn the mic back over. I just want to say I thank you extremely. I'm extremely grateful for you taking the time to share your experience with us. And inshallah, Allah continues to bless you and protect you, your family, in all your good works, inshallah.
Amin wa antum. I want to say, Imam, that you've got some powerful allies that you can reach out to, and that have a tremendous amount of influence. Pastor Otis Moss is one. I would love to make sure that we're connected and that our communities work together. Rabbi Young is one. And Rabbi Young's congregant, Representative Jan Schatkowski, put together a letter insisting on at least basic humanitarian consideration as they attempt to evict 2.2 million people in a day. And 55 members of Congress signed on to that. Anyone who can, if you want, you can write to me. If you want, you can look it up or go to the coalition's WhatsApp group. Sister Delara has it somewhere on that group. You can look at that letter. And if your senator and your congressman is not on there, call. Call. Why can't they stand up for basic humanitarian considerations? Are we that bloodthirsty? Have we become that kind of warmongering people? I haven't. You haven't. And so let's make the people who are supposed to represent us.
I mean. All right. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
I just want to add, I've got some more comments. Truly appreciate the presentation. May Allah continue to bless you. That was from Sister Aisha, from Sister Amina Saeed. Thank you, Dr. Ammar and Mashal, to share this compelling, insightful information. So timely and pertinent. Dr. Ammar, I hope you will continue to share your presentation with the audience across America. Thank you again. Dr. Ammar, can you put in the chat some of the suggestions in terms of engagement, so that folks can copy and paste? I know one significant thing, of course, is to reach out to your elected official. It's our tax dollars that's unfortunately helping to pay for this destruction. And that's something that we all need to do. We all need to take some responsibility in having this addressed. Yes, American Muslims for Palestine, Jewish Voices for Peace. Okay. Trinity United Church. Okay, I have another hand up, and please just bear with me because I'm trying to keep up with all the hands.
Okay.
Okay. Brother Roderick Bashir.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Alia.
Wa alaikum assalam. How
Can
are you,
you,
my brother?
Alhamdulillah, thank you very much for this presentation. I think Imam Tariq kind of summed up our gratitude for the presentation. But I did want to ask you, since, not just since this incident has taken place, but over time, I feel like I've been watching Israeli television in America. I know you made reference to MSNBC, and I would throw CNN and some of the others in there as well. Do you have a recommendation on news sources, news media sources that give at least a balanced view to the American citizens on what's going on in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? I've been watching Al Jazeera. I had to turn away from MSNBC, but do you have any other recommendations?
So that's always challenging. I'm a polyglot. I speak a couple of languages. And so one of my practices before I wake up in the morning is that I listen to news from various countries, often in various languages, because somewhere in the middle is that kernel of truth. Al Jazeera is a good source. Currently, the Israeli Director of Communications is somehow attempting to disrupt the ability of Qatari Al Jazeera from being able to broadcast at all. And to be honest, most media is in the hands of a very small number of individuals. And so you'll see these influences in different spaces. I encourage you as much as possible, go ahead, look at Al Jazeera, but look at multiple sources. The BBC is going to show you one thing. CNN is going to show you another thing. You'll find kernels and grains of truth, but don't go down the rabbit hole because that's another danger. And also with our passions on this subject, be very cautious of anything that simply paints one person or another person as evil. What has happened through the occupation, the apartheid state of Israel and its practices, and the current barbarism that we see, that is pushing us to polarize and to see enemies as they and good as us. And the story, of course, is often far more complex than us. And than that, sometimes we do things that we shouldn't be doing. We initiate or we attack. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not love the oppressor. He says that fighting is a thing that has been prescribed for you, although it's a thing that you dislike, but you may dislike a thing that is in fact good for you. And so fight in the cause of your Lord. But he also cautions us that there are limits to the ways in which we must engage in fighting, that we have to seek peace and enter into treaties as soon as a reasonable option emerges. And that we have to keep in mind that what we're fighting is oppression, that he does not love the transgressors. So when we go too far, we have lost his favor. But that we are to fight oppression wherever we see it, because oppression is worse than death. And so we have to keep in our minds and our hearts, no matter what we're consuming out of the news, that we have a message from God himself that is our best guide on what is truth and what is falsehood. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that truth stands out clearly from falsehood. So trust and believe that. And when you consume something and it kind of irritates your spirit, go with that.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think earlier I saw the hand of Bashir Assad.
Yes. Assalamu alaikum, my dear.
Walaikum assalam, Uncle Bashir.
That was a very balanced presentation. And I think the presentation showed us the beauty of humanity and also showed us the other side, where the injustices that you speak of are perpetrated. And as Muslims, in any situation, problems and situations that we're dealing with, Allah guides us to go to the Quran and to the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And just like the delegation that you were on, and you saw those situations there in Israel, Palestine. Over the years, there have been many people who have went there. This community, under the leadership of Imam Muhammad Muhammad, he went there early in his mission and seeing the injustice and atrocities that were being put upon the Palestinian people. He said he would take off his clothes and get butt naked to fight them. I don't know what he meant by the butt naked, but he did make that particular comment. But I want to make this observation to you as a psychologist. And Imam, he sensitized us to in our situation of injustice in the racist situation we had here in America. He said we should study why these people, and Allah created all the human beings, all nationalities. He said we should study why they did what they did. So using that approach to this situation, I recently was reading in Quran, in Surah 7, the Heights, LR, and it reads, "So now mercy has been assigned to those who follow this messenger, the Ummi prophet, whose mention they shall find in the Torah and the gospel with them. He enjoins them to follow the virtue and forbids them from evil. He makes pure things lawful to them and impure things unlawful." Now, this is from the translation of Mount Duty. And he was pointing out this was being addressed to the Jews of that time. And in his commentary, he points out or says, here's the use of the word Ummi for the holy prophet is very significant. This title was used to break the national pride and the arrogance of the Jews, who called non-Jews Ummis, Gentiles. In this respect, they were so arrogant that as a nation, not to speak of acknowledging an Ummi as their leader, they were not ready even to concede basic human rights to Gentiles. They asserted, we are not to be called to account for our behavior toward the Gentiles. Now, we know that Allah's guidance to us, he points out errors of those in the past, but these are supposed to be lessons to us too, to all humanity. So this is not an indictment of the Jews per se, but anybody that takes that type of mentality. And I think we see that being acted out in this Israeli government of today. I know I've heard many people talk about President Biden's and his comments to the situation and didn't see it to be balanced. I was on another program earlier and I didn't realize this. But in his presidential campaign, his early presidential campaign, when Barack Obama was elected president, the commentator pointed out that he mentioned he was a Zionist Christian. Mm-hmm. A Zionist Christian. So he said he was not surprised at President Biden's comments. Another commentator also pointed out that when she visited Israel, an older Jewish woman told her that she was dissatisfied, and she called those who of the Jewish community, she called them Nazi Jews. And Imam Wadi Muhammad, he said in his analysis in the psychological aspect that he's seen in the Israeli government, they were doing the same things that had been done to them during that period of time, the Nazis. And he pointed to in psychology that sometimes children who grow up in an abusive home will also become abusive. So
I think that was part of what I was trying to emphasize, and what is much more beautifully emphasized by Dr. Bashir and Amos Goldberg in their book, The Holocaust and the Nakba, which I encourage everybody to read, is that this is a continuation of trauma visited onto a people. And some people respond to trauma by opening their hearts, and other people respond to trauma by repeating the mistakes that were visited on them. When we stop to think, thinking is always necessary, reflecting, kind of coming to points where we recognize that we don't have to demonize a people, particularly as we are being demonized and fighting against that. But we can't slow down. And I think that is always the risk. Sometimes as we begin to study and look and reflect, we miss the moment. And right now, the moment is very, very real. 2 million Gazans are being evicted, bombed. 1/2 of them are children. 1/2. Who can bomb a baby and claim justice? Who can take a child and imprison it and claim justice? What nation with the level of arms and international support that Israel has can truly, justifiably claim to be terrorized by children, by people who don't have machine guns, tanks, an air force, a navy, the nuclear weapons and arsenals and all that sort of thing, who have none of that. So there are some lessons that we can learn by taking a moment for reflection and stopping and gathering information. But we have to be able to walk and read at the same time. We have to be able to raise our fists and raise our fingers and join people at the same time. And I think that it's a really important aspect of who we are as Muslims as well. You know, we're allowed to pray while riding away from danger. We're allowed to pray even if the enemy is upon us. Separate into 2 groups, make sure you get your prayers in. We're allowed to multitask in this faith. And so we can learn and we can act at the same time. But what we cannot do in any way, shape, or form, particularly at this moment in time, is to give ourselves any justification to stop, pause, and say, why don't we wait? Because as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. answered in his book, Why We Can't Wait, it is always the oppressed who are asked to wait. The oppressors are never asked to wait. They're never asked to say, don't you have enough land? Don't you have enough homes? Don't you have enough water and enough food and enough electricity? Don't you have enough of the bounty of your Lord to share? to share some of the country that you stole? Don't you have enough? The oppressors are never asked to answer that question, but we are often asked to be patient and wait and to think and to stop. But we can multitask, and we must.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. Oh, your comments were very moving. Are there any last questions before we begin to wrap up?
Yes, sister, I thought I had my hand up, sister. I don't know if it went down, and maybe I took it down.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't. I've been monitoring and looking. Please go ahead.
It's probably me.
No.
Well, first of all, I'm going to be cognizant of the time and be very brief because there's some very, very, very wise people on this call, and much has already been said. I wanted to try to add something very practical. But first of all, thank you, Dr. Alia, for the presentation. There are simple things that we can do too. You know, we understand, we've talked a lot about the media strategy, and that's very, very important. We've talked about calling our political representatives, that's very important. But what we have much more opportunity to do all day is to just talk to people. You know, we are, those of us on this call, most of us, we're in a pretty respected group of people. And our influence is pretty heavy. People look to us, and don't just let circumstances shape the conversation. Almost everyone is ready to talk about this anyway. So I say, take what we know, take what we believe. They say, he to whom much is given, much is required. We are members of a community. We've had so much given to us, so much given to us. So a lot is required of us. One of the things we have received, people have a lot of faith in what we say. So take that opportunity and leverage that for good, because oppression anywhere is really anyone who attacks freedom any place, it's a threat to freedom everywhere. So I know I'm paraphrasing a few geniuses in saying that, so I won't try to quote them, but I'm saying you guys know that that's true. And the last thing I say is, Dr. Ali, and I always jump in on this one, you know, we say people look like us. Everybody looks like us because we look like everybody.
Yes.
Everybody can find their likeness among us. I think I've heard Imam Muhammad say that. Everybody can find themselves among us.
Yes.
Meaning in our families, some of our families and our extended families, we have everybody's image. Every group on the planet, there's somebody in our family who looks like them or close to look like. So.
You know, you bring up a really good point about the small ways in which communicating with one another can be helpful. Something that is truly dear to my heart, and that I am always interested in, and invite anyone who can help me in this to do. I want to bring together the African American community and Palestinian American community. There are things that we need to resolve between communities. There are practices that occur within our African American communities that can certainly be improved in terms of business structures and working relationships. But we shouldn't have such a divide between two communities that should be united in social justice. And so for anyone that wants to do that with me, please, I put my email in there a little bit earlier. Please feel free to reach out to me.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. We've got a couple comments, lots of comments on thanking you for such a very insightful presentation. From Mushtag Darabi, says, Dr. Ammar, lots of wisdom, valuable suggestions, and the presentation with history and current situation is the best I've ever heard. May Allah bless you, and may He have His mercy and bless courage and guidance to the people to stand for their rights of freedom. So that was beautiful. If there are no further questions or comments, I'd just like to add one. So any other questions or comments before we sign off?
The only thing that I want to add is a final dua for all of us. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanatan wa akhirati hasanatan wa qina azabana. Oh, our Lord, Please grant us good in this life and grant us good in the next life and protect us from the punishment of the hellfire.
Ameen, ameen, ameen. And so we will accept it as our dua. I just have the one thing I want to add, and that is this recently just came out just a day or two ago, the Human Rights Watch, when there is documented video evidence where the Israelis are using what's called white phosphorus. And though it's not a bomb, but it falls on the skin and creates infection down to the bone, and can be lethal. And this, this is chemical warfare. It's not spoken as such because, I read that the way it attacks the body. So it's not like it burns the skin off, but what it does is creates a very slow wound that goes deep into the bone and prevents from healing. And so I think that that's one area in particular, connecting with the Human Rights Watch and to making sure that your voices are heard about this, what in essence is chemical warfare, though it's not called as such. And with that being said, we will accept your dua, and I thank you for being our guest presenter today, and really sharing such valuable insights. The pictures about culture, about real life every day, and really humanizing the Palestinian people and the African Palestinians, because we don't get that information here. That's not on CNN. That's not on MSNBC.
Absolutely.
And so I appreciate that humanization. So I thank you. And so with that in mind, we're going to conclude. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I thank all of you for your participation. May Allah continue to bless us all. Ameen, ameen.
Ameen. Please also take a moment to pray for Rami Nashashibli and his family. May Allah always keep Nashashibli lands in Nashashibli hands, and may he always bless Rami for what he has done. If you have a chance, check out Iman, the Inner City Muslim Action Network, and support the work that amazing brother is doing. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.